Thank you very much, Ken, for that reminder, taking us back and down memory lane to look at those that have held that position of second in command, previously vice president, now deputy president under the Constitution of Kenya 2010. A total of 11 deputies and with 4 presidencies so far in this country. And as Ken rightfully said, I'm now joined live by the ANC party leader, Musalia Mudavadi, who we have just seen there. Once served as Kenya's vice president. Thank you very much, sir, for making time for KIVUMBI 2022. And I'll begin perhaps with what you remember from that time, quite some few years back, 2002 December, just through to February, a short stint it was. What can you tell us you remember from that time deputizing late President Moi?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I'll try to talk in perspective as much as possible because you've given an array of the position of a deputy leader in this country all the way through to the current position. Now, all I can tell you is that in 2002, we were busy campaigning. So it may not have been so easy to have time to conduct my duties as a deputy president. But let me just put it very clearly. You are right that this is a position that has had challenges in this country. It is a position that in the cultural way, you say that you want to be close to the fire to receive just enough warmth, yet you also want to be far enough so that the fire does not burn you. So looking at it from that context, I would like to state that this is a position that has taken a different turn because in the first context, we were dealing with a constitution that was a hybrid constitution. Circumstances were very different. And then now we have a situation where you have the deputy president and the constitutional dispensation is very different. In the first one, the president was not elected in a package with his deputy president. He was elected on his own, and then he would name his vice president later. In the current constitution, they come as a package. So, frankly speaking, we have to look at it in the context of which constitution would we be referring to. But by and large,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in there.
Go ahead.
When you talk about that, you know, this was just close to the election, so it was a campaign season for the period you were vice president. But what do you think at the time informed you as choice to deputize the late Moi? Because those who have opined in the past, scholars and others, were talking about regions and that you were seen to be the face of a region bloc being sought to consolidate that going forward. Do you see it as that being the thing that informed the choice of you?
There could have been many reasons that informed. Unfortunately, the person who appointed me is not with us anymore. But let me put it this way, that yes, when somebody is looking at the position of his deputy, they try to look at it in the context of what does the voting bloc hold. These are issues that come into play when such a decision is being made. So clearly, at that time, it is very possible that the then president may have been trying to figure out how to affect the political minds of the specific voters in a given area when he made the decision. So that could have been one consideration. But let me put it this way. It was those days when you are not told why you are being appointed. And believe you me, I got my news as a news flash the media outfits. So at no time had I been called earlier to be told that you're going to be a vice president. And by the way, that was also the tradition, not just when it was a question of appointment, but even when it was dismissal. Some of the other vice presidents who may have either been moved from the seat and so forth would learn of it through a reshuffle.
Right, and clearly we've come
through the radio.
Yeah,
and,
we've come a long way as a country.
And never were you called to be told that I'm going to appoint you as a vice president, or I'm going to relieve you of your duties as vice president.
Yeah, and we have come a long way since then, yes. And you have had occasion to then make that decision when you ran for president in 2013, and your running mate, Jeremiah Kioni. Can you speak to us briefly about what informed that choice? At the time we are seeing you make forays in central Kenya, the Mount Kenya region. At that time, can you speak briefly to what inspired that decision?
Yes, I was looking at central Kenya, no doubt about it, as a critical constituency, if I may put it that way, in the country. They are a huge voting bloc. They have had an opportunity to lead this country and contribute to this country in different situations. So at that time, such factors came into play when I was making the decision. But let me put it with a light touch at the end of the day. This is a situation where you say beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Because when these decisions are being made, when one is choosing a running mate, it is you who makes that decision, and it is you to determine whether the chemistry between the two of you and the person will gel or not gel. If it gels, you tend to work better together. If it does not gel, then we could have problems, and perhaps we'll be coming to talk to that later on some of the situations where we saw difficulty in that position. And remember, at the same time, the position of vice president or deputy president, for that matter, you may not necessarily, you may be the principal assistant of the president of the day, but you're not necessarily his closest advisor.
Yeah, right. And going into this 2022 race, I wonder then where it was more of, you know, in the past, in the former dispensation, that older constitution, it was appointive. Now you're on a joint ticket. One would argue then you need a deputy or running mate that has some weight and gravitas so as to be able to achieve that which you set out to. So going into the next election, with what we've been seeing you with the tours recently, you still appear very keen on the Mount Kenya region for perhaps a running mate going forward. And not just you, even those in the region, with the exit of the President Kenyatta expected, are saying that no candidate can, you know, purport or wish to go the long haul without a running mate from the region. Do you agree with that kind of utterance?
I think it's a bit premature to come to that conclusion, because we've had a number of elections in this country with strong competing players or formations, and it does not necessarily mean that the running mate has had to come from the mountain region. But that does not mean that it's not worth looking at that region again. It is critical, it is important, it has to be engaged. I mean, for any politician seeking the presidency, me included, if you're not going to engage the Mount Kenya region, then you're treading on very slippery ground. Equally, we have to engage other parts of the country. But the decision of who will be a running mate will come down the line. And as I said, the critical issue at the end of the day may be twofold. One may be, what does the person bring on board, he or she? Do they bring numbers and so forth? But going forward, if you're looking at it from a long-term perspective, you must also figure out, do you have a chemistry that will work? Or are you going to enter into a toxic relationship? Initially, for purposes of the numbers, and subsequently to the detriment of the country, because conflict ensues, and then the service delivery is hampered.
Yet, Honorable Mudavadi, you talk about chemistry being crucial and important, and yet there was no better chemistry than what we witnessed with Uhuruto. You know, the bromance was at another level, with the matching shirts and the ties and, you know, constantly in these events together, the body language, all of it appeared to be a match made in heaven. Yet here we are with an acrimonious fallout. So I wonder what then lessons as a country for you think with this Uhuruto fallout we can take out, because it can start off well, but look at where we are today.
Well, maybe the chemical mix that was used did not have a long shelf life.
How so?
And this is why we are seeing a situation where there's a clear situation where the presidency is not functioning the way it functioned in the first 5 years. It's an open secret that we are seeing a moment of extreme tension within the presidency. We are seeing moments of insubordination. We are seeing situations where there's a public discourse or exchange of words that have actually astounded the Kenyan people, because that is not what they expected. And if there are lessons to be learned from this, is that we have to be very careful when we are making up this kind of partnership, and more so because when there is such divergence in terms of direction at the helm, the consequences are grave. Cabinet is split, the top civil service is split, and this trickles down to even all aspects of public service. And it can be dangerous, because this kind of situation can also trickle down into the security agencies, and that can be very detrimental to the security of the country.
And yet,
so it is absolutely important that this kind of decision is given a lot of reflection by the contenders.
Right. And yet we're not hearing something more curative of the situation, that you talk about, you know, more thought going into it, being careful about the decision. But as we have clearly outlined, and those who know what has transpired in the recent past, no, it all started well. It was all hunky-dory, but here we are. So some have ventured into, should perhaps the role, which of course is outlined in the Constitution, but that reconsider and have more tangible duties to the deputy president as opposed to principal assistant to the president?
I think, Sophie, remember, we cannot you cannot legislate behavior in this context. This is an attribute that is purely personal. If somebody is given that position, surely there must be some etiquette that goes with it, some decorum, some integrity that goes with that kind of position. Now, in the past, it is true that all the vice presidents under the old constitution would have a portfolio with them. It would either be home affairs, like in the case of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, Moi, I think even eventually Mudia Wori, and even Kalonzo. When it comes to others, Kibaki was vice president, and he also held the docket of finance. I was vice president, and I held the docket of transport and communications. So it can happen, and that happened within that constitution. But the constitution that we have, and remember even Wamalwa Kijana was initially appointed vice president without a portfolio, and then subsequently I think there was some disquiet, and Kibaki had to give him the docket of regional development over and above the position of vice president. So when you look at it from that context, it used to be done, but it also narrowed the opportunity of the vice president to talk to other dockets or portfolios in that government, all right, because they had their own specific ministers. Now, in the new constitution where there's the presidency, the way we saw it, and some of us could see that there could be some challenges, is that the whole issue of being elected on one ticket was misinterpreted, because we had this theory of 50% government for Ruto, 50% government for Uhuru. So clearly, the way it had been sold, the way the presidency had been sold, it had been sold as a package, all right, to the Kenyan people.
Okay.
Now, is that the interpretation of the Constitution? Does the Constitution interpret that? No, the Constitution simply says, the current one, that he shall be the principal assistant to the president. The president can then assign him chairing subcommittees or chairing special task forces and so forth. But this comes through chemistry, through the feeling that this is okay. And, but what we can see here is that we don't know whether there were personal interests or whatever that may have informed the current government and the current president to look away from his deputy in this kind of situation. And that is why perhaps in his restructuring of government, the person who chairs subcommittees is Honorable Matiang'i.
All right, Honorable Mudavadi,
so I may not know the other thing, but the point I'm trying to underscore is that the whole issue of etiquette, personal respect to your boss is very critical, because we cannot have a situation where the topmost positions are disagreeing, because that is affecting cabinet. You own up to what is a success, and you try and throw away what are challenges, and yet you are still sitting in the same government. That is not right.
And when the deputy president has been challenged to resign, even by his boss, he's maintained that he's here by merit, it's not a favor. So we will continue with this conversation, so just stay with me. We're taking a quick short break to also talk a little bit more about perhaps when we have had those in One Kenya Alliance, it's saying they will not play second fiddle. So how will all of that play out, that and much more after these few short messages.